You have heard it was said, sow a thought, reap an action, sow an action, reap a habit, sow a habit, reap a character. Now, there are a lot of good steps in this. There's a lot of wisdom in a saying like that, and I got a problem with it.
A problem? Oh my. Um, well, I guess we'll have to get into that. But before we do, I just want to welcome everybody once again to the Sacred Life. I guess I should have updated the names since John has joined with me here because my actual personal name is not the Sacred Life. I'm actually David Baylor, and John here is John Baylor. So I hope that doesn't confuse you, our dear viewers. Um, and maybe you'll forget my name if it's not clearly labeled. But anyway, welcome you all once again to the Sacred Life. And as I said, I am David. And this is my brother John joining us here tonight. We're glad that you guys could be with us as we explore this subject tonight. Just to remind everybody, please consider checking out the links in our description. As always, I am the sponsor of the Sacred Life with my business, Gregorius Iconography. I'm an Orthodox iconographer. You can check out the links for that in the description. Um, there's also a link there. You can consider becoming a channel member of the Sacred Life. We're not producing any members only content right now, but we will be doing that in the future as we gain channel members. That's the way you can support us. And of course, things like super chats are always welcome as well. And just continue to follow along as we work on our creative projects, like our we're still doing an animated series to tell the lives of the saints, but we're also wanting to kind of rework some of that as something more like a radio drama, maybe some other creative projects coming up soon as well. So stay tuned for that. And if you're supporting us here at the Sacred Life, it helps to support those in other projects. And of course, what you see us currently doing here on this channel. Anyway, that's all I have to say by way of introduction. So, John, you mentioned you have a problem with that statement. So I guess I'm gonna make you kind of explain that a little bit. Like, what's your problem with that?
Okay, well,
What?
this is sort of the I think, therefore I am kind of problem where, so that I think, therefore I am, that's an idea from Descartes.
Mm-hmm.
Descartes is going to come to like sort of traditional conclusions about what is reality and what is God and who are we and how should we live our lives and all this.
Yeah.
But
Well, I always heard that you should not put Descartes before Dehorse.
yeah, well, whenever I'm feeling like not really mentally present, then I adjust the phrase a little bit and I say, I don't think, therefore I don't am.
Very good.
But but you might say that kind of idea, like what Descartes is doing that is revolutionary and problematic, is that he is using his own thoughts as the ground of everything.
Right.
Like the fundamental reality is what happens in here inside of my head, and this is not like the traditional way of living in the world. This is, I mean, I will just say it's not a very wise way of living in the world ultimately. But I won't say too much about Descartes. Just to say that little saying that I started with has the same idea. It uses my thoughts as the foundation for everything. So where does my character come from? Well, ultimately, it comes from what's happening in here, or you might
Mm-hmm.
also say like it comes from what happens in my heart. And when we privilege our thoughts like this, what we're doing is we're kind of, you might say like we're showing a kind of disrespect for the body and what the body does. I said that emphasizing what happens in here is not a very traditional way of looking at the world. Traditionally, what you're focused on, and I'm saying this coming from a literary perspective, traditionally what you're focused on is you need to act wisely in the world. And that is
Mm-hmm.
more important than what's happening in your head and what's happening in your heart. And not that these things don't matter at all, because there is an interplay between your thoughts and what your body is doing. But ultimately, the action is more important in a traditional way of thinking. So again, the reason why I started with that and said I've got a problem with that is because it sees everything as flowing out of the thought. And the reality is that what happens in our thoughts is really, really heavily influenced by the world outside of our heads, and by what our bodies themselves are doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're talking about, you're saying a traditional perspective. Now, if I'm going to come at this from a Christian perspective, I might challenge what you're saying with things like, well, doesn't Jesus say, for example, God judges, like, doesn't the scripture say, God judges the heart, or God knows what's on man's heart? And of course, like Jesus, we might often read his kind of reassessment of the Mosaic law of the Torah, where he says, you have heard it's such and such a way, but I say to you, it's this way. As like he's saying, it's not about the action, but it's about the intent. Like, for
Hmm.
example, with adultery, he says, who's like even looks at a woman in lust after her has committed adultery in his heart. So we might challenge what you're saying with, well, in Christianity, though, we learn that it's what's in the heart that counts, and God looks on the heart. Um, and I think people can extend that further, obviously, than I'd be comfortable with. But let's kind of follow along that line for a little bit and consider that maybe as a counter argument, or it could be seen as a counter argument to what you're saying.
Okay. Um, First, I would say that the example when you bring up committing adultery in your heart, um, this in no way diminishes like the the problems that occur in your life and the problems that occur inside of you if you actually commit the adulterous act.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is value in like looking at a person's lustful desires and looking at what's going on the inside and saying um, that the lust itself is a big problem. Um, but again, like what you wind up doing with your body is going to just have a profound impact. So there might be like corruption in you. There might be a kind of lust in you that would lead you to committing the act. Um, but but once the act is committed, you have forever, except by the grace of God, you have forever altered what is inside of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even in the language that I'm using right now, I'm suggesting like what happens in here is important. There's an interplay between your interior state and what you do with your body, obviously. And when I say interplay, what I'm saying is it's not just quite as simple as your thoughts or your feelings are going to cause a certain action, but it's a cycle. Um, it's like this arrow runs both ways, and when you commit the action, you are changing the nature of your thoughts. You're changing the nature of your desires by what you do with your body. And so
Mm-hmm.
so that statement is not about dismissing and saying like, look, the actual physical act is not that big of a deal, all right? That's not what that's not what that statement means. The physical act is still a really really big deal, but there's also like uh, there's something that's more subtle that also needs to be taken into account.
Mm-hmm. Um, so I guess kind of like what I have in mind in this conversation, and going back to what you're saying here, like we're just thinking about like the importance of the body in prayer. And this is like a strong contrast to the way a lot of modern Christians think about prayer, where we think of prayer, as primarily as like a mental exercise. And I would say, like for myself, growing up, experiencing like a lot of skepticism or criticism of any kind of embodied ritual involved in prayer. We've talked about that some on the Sacred Life before, and there's certainly a lot more to exhaust on that subject. But just this idea that prayer is something I do. It's like a condition of my heart, and it's something that happens like in my mind, or it's something of like pure soul. And of course, if you follow the Sacred Life, you know that I've talked about this before, how sometimes people kind of smuggle this kind of like Platonic view of the soul into Christianity, or like this Origenism, when they're thinking that way. But like what me and John had talked about kind of in preparation for this topic tonight is there's kind of this way in which modern Christians start to look at the body as kind of like the adversary of the soul. Um, or like Calvin will directly refer to the body as the prison of the soul, as an example. and this is something that I think is like very much ubiquitous in modern Christian thought, at least in American Christianity, that the body is corrupt, the flesh is evil, and it's the soul that is pure. And so true prayer and true religion is something that is of the soul. And the body is like the body is like the thing that's like always distracting us from true prayer or true spiritual ascent. And like I know like Plato actually says this directly in some of his later writing, like thinks that the body is a distraction against like the rational ascent of the soul. Um so what would you have to say, I guess, kind of to some of that before I
Okay. Now I'd like to get into the philosophical discussion in a minute. I mean, just really briefly, I would say that that has a lot to do with a kind of enlightenment worship of reason and worship of the intellect.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Plato, you mentioned Calvin, which would of course be before the Enlightenment. So it's not exactly just tied to a time period,
Mhm.
but it's not a Christian vision. It's something very different. It is a vision that instead is worshiping what's going on inside of your own head.
Yeah.
So not a Christian approach. But like I
Well,
said
I
before,
do I do, however, like I kind of see personally that Enlightenment way of thinking as an extension of Reformed theology.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, I do as well.
like that's not a complete explanation. There's obviously other factors going on in the Enlightenment than Reformed theology, but to a large degree, like Reformed theology is a major influence on the rationalism of the Enlightenment. So
Yeah, yeah. Now, but before I get into too much philosophical discussion, I do want to talk a little bit about this kind of two-way street here. And I said before this represented a kind of disrespect of the body because actually your body has a great authority, a great influence over, you could just say, the state of your soul. I didn't remember, um, didn't mean to bring this out, but I remember reading C.S. Lewis. This would have been in Letters to Malcolm, where he says something about like um, your body certainly has an effect on your spiritual life. For example, it's very difficult to pray if one is very sleepy.
mhm.
And even just in that, he wasn't committing too strongly to the position of the body influencing your spiritual life, but he picked this one really little thing that was like, okay, that is totally undeniable.
Well, so there's actually something interesting there, um, because this is an ascetic practice of the ancient church, and something that you'll still encounter, like for example in Orthodox monastic practice, that depriving yourself of sleep is something that you do in like an ascetic form of prayer.
Hmm.
Like we might call it keeping vigil. Um, you know, in a similar way that depriving yourself of food in terms of like fasting is kind of like this ascetic practice of prayer. Depriving yourself of sleep and kind of like pushing your, how would I say it, pushing your body to its limits. And you are, yeah, I don't know, you're kind of like encountering the edge of yourself. And I just think it's kind of interesting because this kind of shows a difference in the patristic vision of prayer, even than what somebody like C.S. Lewis might have had in mind when he's making a statement like that.
Well, I
Um,
think what he probably had in mind was the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.
yeah, right,
When
right. Yeah,
the
I don't.
disciples are like unable to pray in the way that they would want to because they're tired.
Yeah, right. That's true, and I don't want to be too presumptuous with what he said because I'm not familiar with the quote or its context. Um, but yeah, I just like that is kind of an interesting, I don't know, kind of an interesting illustration of what we're talking about tonight. That there is this way in which being brought to its edge brings the body, I don't know, like brings the body into this kind of participation in our prayer as well. Um, but like I think like an important aspect of what's going on there with things like keeping vigil like staying awake, forcing yourself to stay awake, or abstaining from food, keeping ourselves from eating, that these things discipline the body, because there is this goal in Christianity that the body is being redeemed together with the soul, and I think that's an important aspect. Really, of what I want to talk about is that again, we can look at the body as the adversary of our salvation, as I would say, like Calvinists do. People who, under the influence of Reformed theology, see the body as the adversary of our salvation, and so it's by the denial of our body that, like, the rational soul can ascend to true spiritual prayer, which again is more akin to an Origenist idea, as I would understand it, than a patristic idea of prayer. But so anyway, there's this, like the denial of the body leading to the rational ascent of the soul and true spiritual prayer. And in contrast, it's like, no, the body is being redeemed together with the soul. And, with having the incarnational theology that we have as Orthodox Christians, again, I'm an Orthodox Christian, John here, he's not an Orthodox Christian. But so I'm speaking on my side of things but not speaking for John, just in case those of you watching, I don't want you to make undue assumptions here. But anyway, in our Orthodox understanding of prayer, like we understand because of incarnational theology, Christ has entered into our humanity and is redeeming and saving and restoring our humanity. And so we don't look at the body as intrinsically evil in the way that some Christians seem to do. And so what that means is that the body plays an instrumental role in our salvation and in our life of prayer, because the body is half of who we are. We are a body, like we are composite beings, as St. John of Damascus would say. We are composite beings consisting of material body and rational soul, kind of as a very brief paraphrase of how he puts that. And so, like, to me, as I meditate on that idea, it sort of drives me towards the necessity of, how would I say it, the necessity of embodied practices in prayer, the necessity of my body participating in prayer and not merely being something that has to be escaped from, or like, yeah, like you have this idea in a lot of religions, I think, especially in like Eastern religions, where prayer and meditation is like this ascent from the body.
Yeah, good. You stopped in the middle. I don't know if you were
No,
continuing.
sorry, I was just stopping there and giving you a chance to jump in. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So I do want to talk a little bit about just the body's influence of the on the interior state, or on the spirit or soul, or I mean, there's however you would want to describe this. Um, and this will appear to be kind of non-spiritual when I get into this, but it's kind of what led us into having this conversation was my reflecting on this particular way that the body influences the interior state.
Mm-hmm.
If Now, I especially would connect this to, like, if you're doing public speaking, or like if you're in some kind of situation where you might be prone to being nervous in front of other people or whatever. When you're nervous, you would kind of have this tendency, like you shrink your body down a little bit. I know you can't see most of my body on the camera here, but like you pull your shoulders forward, your head goes down. I mean, even what I'm doing with my arms, like you draw your arms together, you draw your legs closer together, bend at the knees and feet kind of close together. And like you might be standing in front of a crowd of people, but it's like even as you're standing, you're kind of like trying to enter into a fetal position or something. You're scared, you're trying to protect yourself. Well, this is a problem because you're nervous and you're scared, but actually, like, drawing yourself into that kind of a position makes you more nervous. It makes you more scared. it makes your cortisol increase, which is your stress hormone. And so like all those bad feelings that you feel because you're in front of people and you're exposed, like you're actually only making those feelings worse by withdrawing in that way. And if instead
Mhm.
you go in front of people and you assume the confident posture, you've got your shoulders not drawn forward, but you have them like open. Um, you have your arms spread apart. I mean, you can't really see my arms unless I'm lifting them up high, but you could do this in the middle of a speech. Actually, if you're confident, then you can raise your hands up in the air while you're speaking. But you might have your hands on your hips or arms out wide or something. Sorry, I'm trying to move where somebody could see my arms open toward the audience. Um, and that more open posture will have the opposite effect. Your stress is going to go down. Your fear and anxiety is going to go down. Your testosterone increases. So like your confidence, your assertiveness, your like willingness to take risks in front of a big crowd full of people, which actually you need to do if you're going to speak well. Like all that stuff improves. And so, this, like I say, for me was kind of the beginning of the meditations that led us into having this conversation here, because this is really well known and this is very well studied and very well documented, that what you do with your body is going to change your internal state.
Mhm.
And people might feel like, well, I want to be true to what's on my heart or what's in my thoughts, and like what's going on the inside of me is the true thing and the most important thing. And if I'm feeling scared, I should just like close myself off with my body, because that's honest. Not, I mean, not that somebody would exactly vocalize that, like, well, if I'm scared, let me just hunch down and all that while I'm in front of a crowd of people. People won't say that, but they will still kind of feel that, like,
Yeah,
I
well,
don't want to act confident if I'm not confident,
there
because I.
there'd be like this idea that we might have in our minds, and again, and like you said, it's not something that anybody would really, I think, explicitly articulate, or anybody's really teaching anybody else this, but we just kind of naturally think this kind of thought that, like, if I'm scared and I pretend like I'm not scared, then that's dishonest.
Right.
And instead, like, to be truly virtuous, I need to get to a point where I am not scared. That's like,
Right.
well, but how you get to the point where you're not scared is by pretending that you're not scared.
Yeah, and I don't know. I
Like,
mean, there
fake
is
it till
something
you
like,
make it is like
I
actually
don't
a
I
real
don't
thing.
I've never I don't love the phrase for the reasons that we're criticizing right now. I'm sort of also in the position of the people that we criticize too, because
Mhm.
I've never liked this phrase "fake it till you make it," which you were saying while I was talking over you,
Right.
or this idea of like, well, just pretend to be that. I mean, I don't mind, like, act that way, do the thing that you should be doing.
Mhm.
When it's framed as like faking or pretending, like, then that concern about dishonesty, like, I feel that. But if it's framed more like, I know how I should be acting, I know what is the right thing to do right now, so I'm going to do it.
Mhm.
That doesn't carry the same kind of connotation of dishonesty.
Yeah,
um,
and I agree. I think that's like a bad way to phrase it. But I guess like the idea that we're getting at here though is just
I,
this very real concept that you know what is right and you know what is good, and the way that you get from where you are to where you should be is by walking in the way. And
yeah,
like this,
right.
this is an image that is used biblically, and this is
Yeah,
an
yeah,
image that is like important in the Christian tradition, is this idea of walking in the way of salvation. And of course, like I said, this is repeated throughout both the Old and the New Testament. This imagery of of walking in a way, and when what this means, and like this is also what it means that we are called disciples of Christ. Like we're the ones who are following after Christ. We are His followers, and like again, like to me, this language that we use always has like this idea of motion and progression, and like this isn't like this shouldn't be reduced to like this abstract idea, but it should be taken quite literally. That if we want to be like Christ, which is our aim as Christians, is to become like Christ. That's like the whole focus of our Christian religion, is being transformed and being remade in the image of Christ. And, as Orthodox Christians, again, we believe that this is like a synergistic action, that we obtain this theosis, this transformation, by participating in the life of Christ, by participating in the work of the Holy Spirit that he's doing in our lives. And this necessarily requires action. And of course, we had a comment earlier in the comment section claiming that baptism does not guarantee heaven. And of course, we don't say that baptism guarantees heaven, but we do say, along with St. Peter, who says this clearly in the scripture, that baptism saves us. And the reason we say that is because of this concept that we're talking about right here, is that these physical actions of participation, um, these do shape and transform our lives in a fundamental way. And, obviously we're taking that a lot further. I'm using these to illustrate kind of the concept that we're talking about is like, as you were talking about in your illustration, it's like just holding your body in a more confident position. Like it seems like silly to say you're not confident. Well, just stand up, hold your head up, and act like you're confident. And it's like, but yeah, but I'm not confident. It's like, well, stand up straight and hold your head up, and you will be confident.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And with the fake it till you make it, like I said, I was a little uncomfortable with that kind of language. And to give a sort of like philosophical rationale for my discomfort, which is different than like why I actually feel the discomfort. But you could say that fake it till you make it still implies that like what really is real is just what's going on in here. Now there can be like, I mean, you can lie with your actions.
Yeah.
So I don't want to like totally dismiss that from the realm of possibility.
Yeah, but
But
you can
again,
lie
fake
with
it.
your thoughts too.
Yeah, right.
So it's
Yeah,
like, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Fake it till you make it implies again that like the real thing is here inside of yourself, and if you
Mhm.
start doing something different with your body, then you're lying. You're not giving the real thing.
Yeah,
Um,
but like the counterpoint to that is that once you arrive at a system that is like just completely disembodied, completely detached from manifest reality, and is just a theoretical idea, which again is my core criticism of a lot of Protestant ways of thinking, is that they are abstract and disembodied. Which is what happens with those is they become untrue because they're detached from reality. There's nothing to ground them. And so that would again be my criticism of that kind of pure mental prayer, or it's just like it's what's inside that counts, and only what like spontaneously comes out of my mind and my heart, that's real and genuine. It's like, well, no, oftentimes those things are just like completely imaginary and delusional and fake.
yeah, if you know what is the right thing to do, then you should do it, even if it makes you uncomfortable,
Yeah.
even if it makes you scared or whatever.
And I think we all understand the concept that, you know, if you don't feel like praying, for example, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't pray.
Yeah, right.
And it's just like part of what we're saying is that you can extend that concept a lot further than just that one application of it.
Yeah. Yeah, we got this comment, really early on, just somebody quoting from James saying, "Faith without works is dead."
Hmm.
Although that was the same when you were saying about the being baptized does not guarantee heaven one. But
Yeah.
the faith without works is not dead. You keep criticizing the Protestant mentality, and the founder of Protestantism really did not like this faith without works is dead,
Hmm.
and kind of wanted to he didn't really want James to be in the Bible, the book of
Yeah.
James, because of this statement, because it made works too important. And for Martin Luther, what matters is what's going on in here, or in here. I mean, like the interior, like it's by faith that you're saved.
Right.
And so it's this internal thing that's making all the difference. So for him, when he sees James, like, I don't know, this is works-based salvation, and this is the thing that I stand against more than anything else. Which that's what I mean. Any Protestant will criticize something that appears to be works-based salvation that puts too much emphasis on what it is that you're doing. Um, But I think, I mean, for me, like if you have a Christian understanding of the world, then what James is saying like makes total sense. Like there's not even anything to wrestle with. This isn't like a challenging statement that's like, how do I make sense of this thing right here? But it's just like if you feel like you have something in here, but it's not active in your body and the way that you live your life, then you don't really have something in here. You said you can lie with your thoughts the same way you can lie with your actions.
Right.
And like if you think you've got something in here, but you're not living it out in any way, then you are lying with your thoughts, and you're telling yourself you have a kind of faith that actually like is worthless.
Hmm. Yeah, there's I don't know. There's all kinds of like deep philosophical rabbit holes that I want to run down right now with that idea, like especially with the idea of like you know the logos taking flesh and being incarnate, and what that like really what that means for us as Christians, how that reverberates throughout reality, um, and just what incarnational theology means practically in terms of these things. But I'll just briefly mention that that I have those ideas and not run down those rabbit trails, just to keep this conversation kind of grounded and on subject.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, some people get the idea that the Bible is like anti-body because the word, especially because of the word flesh being
yeah.
used to represent the thing that pulls you toward sin and corruption and all this, but also the like the clearest and most powerful description of the incarnation that is in the New Testament is John saying the Word became flesh.
Yeah.
And so this same word that seems to like reek of corruption and suggest like the body is bad is also
Mhm.
like um, um, that is also united with God through the
Right.
incarnation.
Yeah, and that's an important concept for us to understand when we're talking about these things, is that like you do have this patristic incarnational theology that, of course we are created in God's image, and of course what that means is we are created in the image of Christ, like it is specifically the second person of the Trinity, Christ himself, in whose image we are created. And this becomes obviously marred and corrupted and obscured because of sin and because of the fall, and we become subject to corruption and all of this. And this is why, according to the vision of the fathers, why we speak of the flesh as being subject to corruption, is because of this fall. But then it's also, we have to add to that this divine mystery, what you said of the word becoming flesh, the logos of God becoming flesh. Um, which again, for this guy in the comment who's wanting to deny that Jesus is God, it's like, I mean, read read John 1 sometime. Like it's pretty blatantly obvious. Like this Trinitarian theology of Christ is pretty blatant in John 1. But anyway, I won't run down that rabbit trail just to say that. Um, but we are created in this image, in this likeness of Christ. And because Christ has entered into our humanity, he's redeemed and restored that. And so, what that means for us is that, I mean, I've said this already, but this means that our body is being saved. But like, even then, if we look back to the Old Testament, even in the Old Testament, under the old law, when man was under the the dominion of the law, like under the curse and all of these things. I want to be careful how I say this so that I don't accidentally misspeak and commit a heresy. But anyway, you know what I'm getting at. Like even under the old law, it's still obvious that these embodied rituals, these embodied practices are important, and it's something that we need to do. And of course, the patristic vision looks at these and says, like, well, yes, the reason we had the Torah, the reason we had the law, the reason we had this Mosaic covenant is because by doing these things, by living in this way, they are teaching us something, that like embodying the religion in this particular way. teaches us in a way more profound than if we say it. And of
Okay,
course,
yeah, but
we
if
carry
if we
that
use the
message
word
forward.
teaches, then it sounds like a mental exercise. Like the whole point of doing the ritual or doing the physical embodied practice is to make something different like exist in your brain, so you have a
Mhm.
different thought than what you had before. Like that's what the word teaches kind of feels like.
Right.
But okay, I'll touch on the body language thing one more time, but then I'm just going to go right into prayer from that.
Okay.
um, for me, and I don't know if everybody like feels this as strongly as what I do, but if I take one of those like little hunched up postures, and then I just switch to like the big open posture, then like I can feel the transformation happening inside. I can
Mhm.
feel like I can feel like stress leaving. And I don't want to talk too much about like confidence. I mean, my goal in life is not like to go be the most confident high power alpha male or something. Like that's not what I'm trying to do. So confidence, I hesitate to use the word just because of that reason. But I can feel this kind of transformation if I go from this slump down to this like really extreme open posture, and it's really quite striking. So it changes the way that I feel. It changes my attitude. You might say like it changes what my focus is on, what my goals are, what I think I'm capable of doing. And so if I then take I'll just say a traditional posture of prayer, and in my time of prayer, like I go down to my knees and I put my hands and my face on the floor, then again, I feel a transformation that takes place when my body does that. When I say I feel a transformation, I mean like something different is happening in here than what was happening before, because now my body is telling my insides
Yeah.
that like humble yourself in the sight of the Lord. I mean, like become very, very low.
Well,
And
yeah, and there's
like it affects your goals and what your focus is on. I mean, like if I try to, you know, if I try to like before bed, like sit and bow my head or whatever, and say a little prayer, I've got all these other little things going on in my head that are distracting me, and thoughts from the day and whatever. And really, like if I go down on the floor, then my focus is just going to be much much more directed on the actual prayer, instead of
mhm.
those little like worries about tomorrow.
Yeah. Um, yeah, there's just all kinds of stuff like this. So like if you go, for example, to a liturgy, to an Orthodox liturgy, people are doing things all the time, of course, crossing themselves,
Hmm.
and bowing. And and interestingly, we were just having a conversation with this on a Discord group that I'm in. I think it was just yesterday, maybe it was the day before, but about how um, there is a practice during the liturgy that in the consecration of the liturgy, like in the prayer of consecration, that people will prostrate. And this is something that you're so this is the way I understand it, that you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to do the prostration on Sundays. And you're only supposed to do that if the liturgy is done on a day other than Sunday. And that's the way I've always experienced, except for one experience. There's one parish that I went to that did the prostration on Sunday. But the reason, like, this is in like ancient councils of the church, like this is in the canons of the Council of Nicaea, for example, that you're not supposed to prostrate on the Lord's Day. And the reason is because this is the day of resurrection, and like each Lord's Day is like a mini Pascha, a mini Easter. It's like a recapitulation, a representation, a reparticipation in the day of resurrection of Christ. And because of that, this is a day of joy and celebration. Except for like there's like two times in the year where canonically you're supposed to kneel or prostrate. on Sunday. But other than that, you're not supposed to. And the reason, like there's all kinds of like sort of reasons given, but I think really it boils down to that concept that you're saying, which is that here on Sunday, we're supposed to be in a certain attitude and a certain disposition towards God, and prostrating will put us in a different kind of disposition. And so we really should not be doing that for the I think that's part of the reason why. I think that's like so that's one illustration of that. And of course, there's also the custom, and you find this witness in like early church fathers as something that they received from the apostles, that was passed down to the Christians from the apostles themselves, which is that you should always stand facing east when you pray. And of course, as Orthodox Christians, we do this. And I mean, you look behind me. I am facing west right now. This behind me is a prayer corner, as Orthodox people call it. And so when I stand there to pray, I'm standing facing east according to the ancient custom of the church. Um, and like this just being all kinds, like there's just all kinds of examples of things like this of embodied practice. And I don't really quite know how to explain the impact these things have, but they certainly have an impact. And like sometimes if you're feeling lazy and you don't want to stand for prayer, so you just do it sitting down. It's not quite the same. So it's like it's very obvious when you are participating in embodied practices in your prayer that like there's actually something real going on.
Um, I can remember like lots of times hearing Sunday school teachers and whatever when I was a kid saying like really emphasizing you can pray wherever you are, which is, I mean, you like pray continually.
Right.
I don't want to like tear down this idea totally, but there's lots and lots of emphasis on, you can pray while you're driving in the car, you can pray while you're going to the bathroom and whatever. Um, and it seems like it was all a criticism of something that we weren't living, that was not
Yeah.
a part of our life or our practice or anything like that. That they would be criticizing the idea of bowing down, or even the idea of like the standing prayer, or like the lifting up of hands prayer.
Mhm.
And I actually uh, I won't allow myself to get too distracted. I do want to connect to another point that you mentioned. But again, it seemed like the adults in my life, from my perspective anyway. I mean, they were the same adults. I don't know if you had that same kind of feeling about it. But it seemed like there's this constant subtle teaching. Um, well, like what you do with the body is not important, and don't let anybody tell you that it is.
Right.
And I bring up this stuff with the body language just because it's like, well, actually, again, like you can measure the effect that the body has on a person's hormone levels.
Yeah.
You can measure really clearly that it affects your mood, and it affects your mood in ways that affect how you behave.
Well, yeah. So it's like if you're like struggling with feelings of depression or anxiety or something like that, it's like the best thing that you can do is just like get up and go for a walk or
Yeah,
something, or go to the gym. Like get your body in motion, and you'll start feeling better.
yeah, right.
I mean, and this is widely known and widely understood. And of course, that same concept applies to prayer. It's like your body wants to be involved. Like this is the way I look at it. It's like your body is groaning for salvation, because I mean, it is created in Christ's image. It is created in God's image. It's groaning together with your soul for salvation, and let it participate. And in kind of the way I look at it, and I think this is a solid patristic way of understanding it, is that when you don't allow your body to participate in the work of your salvation, when you don't allow it to work in this way, when you don't give it something positive to do, then that energy like it becomes inverted. It becomes your body really does become your enemy at that point, because it's, I don't know, it's, you could say it's frustrated, it's like, I don't know, like kicking against the pricks, I guess is the imagery that comes to my mind. It's like, again, like your body is groaning for salvation and you're denying it. And so now it's raging against you. And
Yeah.
if you would embrace it and direct its energies properly, then you will find it is your partner for salvation. And you can achieve a sort of prayer that maybe you can't otherwise. But then you do have to balance this with, like, at the same time, there is this concept in the patristic teaching and in the biblical teaching of the church that there is a kind of prayer that is, like, ascends above and beyond that. It's
Yeah.
heaven prayer. But what you find in the writings of the fathers is that almost nobody can attain that.
Yeah. Um, it's like people have a kind of arrogance about like I don't want to accept help from another person. I want to be able to be strong
Mhm.
and self-sufficient and like do everything by myself, so I shouldn't ask for help from other people or accept help from other people. There's something kind of similar in the spirit of like feeling like no, my mind or my heart is like strong and spiritual and righteous enough that I can just do the prayer. And sure, like um, somebody else might have to have some bodily practice or something. Somebody else might need to like kneel down on the ground in order to be humble before God, but I don't have to. Um, and uh, um, there's again, it's like this sort of kind of arrogance. I don't need that kind of help, and it seems like that would be a good way of thinking about like exercising the body in practices of prayer. Is that like this is a help. Um, this is something. I mean, I could sit on my bed and bow my head and pray, and like
Mhm.
I can do that. It exists, right? Like, even then I mentioned bowing my head. Like it's even hard to escape like just a little bit of a physical practice. So I'll just say like, okay, I could just pray while I'm driving home from work or something like that, and not engage the body. Like I can do that, but I guess I don't know what is the benefit of refusing the help, like
Yeah.
refusing to have your body be a partner that
Yeah.
that helps you with this. You said
Right.
maybe like your body helps you get to a higher level, and I mean maybe it does or maybe it doesn't. Maybe that high level is possible, without the practice. But like anytime um, when I've made it a point, like I'm going to go ahead and use the bodily practice.
Mhm.
I mean, I just always feel like I'm glad that I did that.
Right. Yeah, and like saying to use the bodily practice is not a prohibition of you do against you doing the other things either. So like you talking about this idea of I can pray in my car, or I can pray when I'm doing this, or I can pray when I'm doing that, and pray without ceasing and all of that. It's like, yeah, that's, I mean, that's an orthodox teaching and an orthodox practice as well. Like look up hesychasm, for example, like the hesychastic monks who exist in a state of constant prayer. Um, and like while they're doing everything, they're praying. And like this is definitely something that happens. And then they are also doing all of the other prayers that the rest of us do, where and all of the embodied things that the rest of us do, the liturgical practice. So like a hesychastic monk is not like locking himself up in his cell and just like sitting, I don't know, like the image I have in my mind is like of a Buddhist monk, like like walling himself up and meditating until he dies. Which is, I mean, yeah, that's a real thing. That's not like a caricature.
Yeah.
It's like something Buddhist monks talked to me about when I was in Thailand, is saying like, oh, we had this one great elder who went out into the jungle and meditated, and he was so great at meditating that he was so detached from his body that he sat in perfect meditation, and a tiger came and ate him, and he didn't he didn't turn away from his meditation. It's
Yeah.
like, first of all, how do you know he didn't turn away from his meditation? Like, were you there watching the tiger eat him? But also, it's like that's not actually admirable. Um, I mean, like, it's impressive. I'll grant you that. But like, yeah, this is not like it's not like the vision of prayer that we have as Christians.
Yeah. Right. The other thing that you were touching on that every time I open my mouth to say something, I want to reconnect to this thing. You were talking long ago about
Yeah.
not
And then I keep
prostrating.
interrupting you and not letting you get there like a
No,
few.
no. I just every time, like I say, I'll start talking about something else, and I'll kind of pause, and it's like, oh, I really want to address this comment that you made. Just you were talking about not prostrating on Sundays because of
Mhm.
this of being the day of the resurrection. And I mean, this is really for my sake, maybe more than for the audience that I wanted to comment on this. But we'd had a conversation on this channel maybe 2 years ago or something like that, where we were talking about the like the kneeling prayer and the rising prayer, and these. I mean, as describing them in terms of different postures, but there's like a um, like really becoming low before God and
Mhm.
really like emptying yourself. And I mean, that this could include confession as a part of this. This could include like um, just the experience of like overwhelming awe. But then you also have this, we were just describing it as a rising prayer, I think is the term that we were using. And this, we're just kind of exploring this, so we weren't familiar with the practice that you're describing at this time. But like, there's also a type of prayer that's like receiving your mission. I mean, like rising up and going out into the world as a transformed person that
Mhm.
carries with you the power of transformation. So it was kind of interesting for that reason to hear of that practice, which I wasn't aware of.
Yeah. Um, and I mean, and Orthodox Christians also believe that a number of physical actions that we do are also prayers. So, like crossing yourself is itself a prayer. Lighting a candle is a prayer. Burning incense is a prayer. Those are some examples of some physical actions that are thought to be as prayers. And it's like, that kind of doesn't make sense to a lot of Protestants to say, like, how is crossing yourself a prayer? How is lighting a candle a prayer? Um, because you only imagine prayer in this like this
Well,
mental
as a thought,
way.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, right.
right. Yeah, and it's like what thought is going on, and like I even face the temptation sometimes of thinking like, in order to make this thing truly a prayer, I have to like say a prayer while I'm doing it. Of course, venerating
Hmm.
the icon is also a prayer. And of
Yeah.
course, you can say a prayer when you're doing those things, but it's like the action itself is it's the prayer of your body, and that's valid and important. And my experience is like allowing my body to pray in that way is incredibly valuable. It's incredibly enriching, and it's something I would say like you're really depriving yourself of something if you don't do all of those things. And of course, we have this theology of icons, and this whole thing that Protestants and some Catholics really like to rag on Orthodox for this idea that the honor given to the image passes to the prototype. But it's like the point is like in terms of this embodied prayer is just like I don't know. I think in a lot of ways, I don't know quite how to articulate what I'm trying to say here, but it's like it's an extension of this concept that we're talking about here, which is that I am with my body paying honor to, I guess you could call it a spiritual reality, a spiritual entity. Thinking of the saints or of Christ or whatever it might be as being like a spiritual reality rather than something that is necessarily bodily present. But what is bodily present is the icon depicting those things. And like how am I paying honor in my flesh with my body to something that is not bodily present? And of course that's what I'm doing with something like icon veneration or something like lighting a candle.
Yeah, I don't have as much of a of icon centered practice as what you do. I've got I've I've got a rosary cross that's hanging above the mirror in my car, and this would be like one example of something in my life that's sort of similar. And I would say the same thing I say about like when I prostrate myself in prayer, or like when I engage the body in a particular way in the prayer, like I always think I'm glad that I did that.
Hmm.
And that the cross that I have hanging there, I mean, I'm glad that I have that there. And again, you can criticize those practices, and people do criticize icons or other similar practices by saying like, well, you think you've got to have this in order to pray, but I can have it without it. And I just would kind of say the same thing I was saying about the body of like, um, why wouldn't you accept the help? I mean, if this thing helps you, if it helps to put you, or I would say put you in the mindset, like if it helps direct your heart toward toward God and toward what is above
Hmm.
yourself, then I'm not sure why somebody would condemn it.
Well, I'm gonna go even a step further than you're going there and just say like it's actually necessary. You actually need that. You need your body's participation because your body is half of who you are. I've heard Christians say, and this is wrong, that you are a soul that has a body. It's like, no, you are a body and a soul, and your body is in need of salvation. And you struggle with the flesh, you struggle with temptations and lusts and things like this. Um, and what's the antidote to those things? Is it to like discipline your mind so much that it can like wrangle the body into subjection to its will? Like, how's that working for you? Like, I don't know that that's really working for anybody to try to discipline themselves so much mentally that they completely bring their bodies into subjection such to where their bodies are are saved, are experiencing any kind of genuine salvation. Like, instead it's just like they have to torture themselves, and like they have to torture themselves in a way that's not good and not productive and not helpful. And in contrast, it's like, but you could you could be, how do I say this? Because like it's hard to phrase this in such a way that's not like using this language of your body as something that you own. But I guess I'll just have to, just for the sake of getting my point across, even though you shouldn't understand it in the terms of your body being something that you possess, as if you were something other than your body. Um, but it's like your body, like you could have your body as your partner in this process of salvation. And like it's beyond what you're saying. Is like, if your body could be participating in these things, why would you not want that? It's like, if your body is not participating in these things, then it is railing against you. It is your adversary. It is dying, and it's not participating in the resurrection life that is Christianity. And I just say, like, that's backwards, it's upside down, it's wrong. um Ironically, it's wrong headed. um so that's kind of my thoughts on that. And especially like looking at the title of this episode, like, your body, like, I think that's true that your body is key to spiritual victory. And one concept, one way I've illustrated it to people in the past, the way I think of this is, sometimes your body is your problem. Sometimes your body and its desires are like raging against you and dragging your mind down into sin and things like that. And like the body being the source of your temptation, its desires, and so on. And you have to kind of exercise discipline of the mind to combat that. Now, I don't think that's necessarily true all the time because I think a lot of those times, if you would put your body to the proper use of, of doing things that glorify God and His kingdom, then maybe your body wouldn't be railing against you so much. Don't be overly reductive with that. But other times, it's your mind that's the problem. It's your thoughts that are the problem. Like your thoughts are being assaulted by demons, and evil images are being placed into your thoughts, and then it is your body that can rescue your mind, rescue your soul from hell by crossing yourself. Or I don't have my prayer rope. Usually I wear it on my rope here, but like taking this physical object and having it in your hand and praying with your hands, or going up and standing and lighting the incense, and it's breathing it in and filling your nostrils and your lungs and this aroma, and lighting the candles, and you have all that sensory experience where your body then is, you know just to put it, I guess, colorfully, to illustrate it, like your body is saving you, like it's rescuing your soul from hell. And that's instrumental. It's like we say here in the title, it is a key to your spiritual victory, that your body is necessary for that. And that's where I think these mental prayer ideas that people have are way wrong, and like dangerously so.
Okay, so I want to just connect what you said now to something you said a little bit ago, just, because I can kind of hear this from different perspectives at the same time, and I can hear like a way of listening to that that's like your body is saving you from hell, and like, what on earth are you talking about? But you actually already gave an example of this that like everybody would accept as true, which is like, if you're depressed, get up and go for a walk. And when you
Yeah.
do that, your body is like saving your soul, or I mean, like the mental state that is horrible for you, that makes you hate living every day. You're solving that by just moving your body. And so if you're doing the sign of the cross, I mean, like, or those, like prayer rope or kind of things, like these are just, I don't want to say a different version of the same thing, but you have that same phenomenon at work where you're in a dark state, and what you do with your body can take you out of it.
Yeah.
And when it's something like that, then it's like, in contrast to going for a walk, which I think also is just like a fundamentally good thing, but in contrast to going for a walk, the things that you're describing are specifically directing you toward union with God, toward having the cross of Christ imposed on your own body.
Yeah.
And so this does like direct your eyes to a particular horizon, whereas going for the walk, is like just get up and move your body, and that's all you need to do.
Yeah. Um, there's a lot more we can say, but we've been going for an hour now. I think it's probably good to wrap up. I don't know what you think, John, if you have any other things that you want to say. Or if you think that we haven't kind of made our point and illustrated our point well enough, I guess we can go on a little bit more. But I think I feel like I've said the things that I wanted to say anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Let me ponder for just a minute, because there are other topics that I don't want to try to raise that I think this touches on.
yeah.
Um,
While you're pondering that, I'm going to address this very important question that we got in our comments
the
here.
nunchucks.
Yeah, that asked how many nunchucks could a Chuck Norris chuck if Chuck Norris could chuck nunchucks. Um, I think my answer to that is that there's no limit to how many
Yeah,
nunchucks
of course
a man
Chuck
can
Norris
chuck.
can chuck nunchucks.
Um,
Yeah, good. Although that
yeah,
didn't help. No, I guess just, I mean, for the sake of clarity, I'll just kind of kind of touch on the issue one more time, which is that what you do with your body does affect what's going on in the inside. So
Right.
sometimes we think like what happens in my thoughts is going to determine everything else that happens. And there's a kind of truth in that. There's a kind of truth that a lot of transformation does begin with like thinking you have a problem and accepting it and processing it through mentally and then making a choice to go in a different direction. But a lot of transformation also happens um, by more mysterious means
Yeah.
than through your own reason.
Right.
Um,
Um,
yeah,
I think there.
what your body can do, what your body does, can change what's going on inside of you,
Yeah. Right.
and
Yeah.
so use that to your advantage. Use that to direct you toward things above.
Yes. Right. Um, there were some other things that we were kind of, when you and I had talked privately earlier today about this, that we kind of, we talked about some things about like, charisma and how you don't actually want your leader to necessarily be like the smartest, wisest person in the room, but rather the the best leader or the most charismatic person, and how that relates to what we're saying here. But instead, I'm just going to like throw out all those things and not explain it and leave people wondering and asking questions. Um, I just thought it'd be fun just to throw those those threads out there and then do absolutely nothing to resolve them.
The other thing that I want to touch on that we haven't addressed at all really is what love is largely. Now, I don't mean this in um, like a physical intimacy kind of way, but like largely is what you do with your body. Like you look somebody in the eyes and you smile at somebody and you put your hand on somebody's shoulder or you shake somebody's hand. Like these are all expressions of love that actually matter a lot more to people than the words that you say for the most part. I mean, some people are like really, really drawn to words, and like if you're going to define your love languages, then you'll have words of affirmation as being one of these things. But most of the communicating that you do is not communicating your rational thoughts. Most
Mhm.
of it is like giving your attention to somebody by
Yeah.
looking at them.
Well, there's this expression. Sometimes it's used seriously. A lot of times it's used in jest. And sometimes you don't really know if the person's using it seriously or saying it in jest. But this sentiment is it's the thought that counts. And my response to that is usually it's no, it's not. Like it doesn't matter what you intended. What matters is what you actually did. And like it doesn't really do me any good that you were thinking good thoughts about me. And like of course we see this in like the political discourse, how especially people on the political left are often annoyed with Christians on the political right for saying, our thoughts and prayers are with these people, if some disaster has happened. And there's like a legitimate criticism there, actually, that, your thoughts and prayers, like it's not that prayers are nothing, like prayers are a lot, but the things that you do are are necessary. Like if there's a need in the community around you and you're not doing anything about it, the Bible pretty clearly tells you if you know to do good and you don't do it, then that is sin. So it's like it's pretty obvious that it's not the thought that counts; it's the things that you do that count. And another example of that is
Well,
like,
that just the thought that counts. Just to interject here really quickly, when people say that, usually they're saying like, "Oh, you did something nice for me, but there was some reason why it didn't work out
yeah.
correctly the way that you'd anticipated."
Well,
And
that's where I was
so,
going next.
but
So
but actually, what they're saying is that was a kind gesture.
yeah,
They're actually not saying like it was nice that you were thinking of me, but they're like, it was nice that you actually took some action. And I know
right.
the action didn't work out, but that's not important. What is important is that you did take the action.
Uh-huh.
So it's weird. Like we would ground it in thoughts, and we would say like, well, in that case, the thought is the important thing. But it's like no, that it doesn't matter that the gesture was botched in some way. Like
Right.
what
Yeah,
matters
because
is
like
that they made a gesture for you.
if you had had like these kind, warm thoughts in your heart, but not even tried, then like I might be kind of ticked off at you. But since you tried and fell short, it's like I appreciate that you tried.
Yeah, right.
Um, but then also, like, it's also true that you can have like the best of intentions towards somebody, and but the thing that you do is like absolutely ruinous and disastrous in their life, and then you can't justify yourself by saying, "Well, I had the right intentions, though. All right, I meant well." It's like, well, yeah, but you also ruined my life, or like you ruined this thing that I was working on, and like that actually matters. And so, like, what I'm saying is like how things are embodied, how things are manifest, what actually happens. And this is essentially realist philosophy that I'm expressing here. That like in a lot of ways, what actually happens in the world and what you actually do physically in your embodied life, your embodied practice matters more than what's going on up here in your mind or what's going on in here in your heart.
Okay, well, you were wanting to wrap things up, and I like I said, just had a couple points I wanted to wrap up. That, like, again, what you do with the body affects what's going on in the inside.
Yeah.
It's not just a one-way street. And then, like I said, also bring in that idea of the acts of love are not just things that are happening in here, but they're things that we do with the body. And again, this sounds like sexual language or something if I say this, when I like that's really not at all what I have in mind. But you love people with your body, with your eye contact, with your smile, with your like the way that you physically respond when somebody enters the room actually is like that's how you show how you feel about somebody. That's how you show that you accept them or that you
Right.
don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a good time to wrap up. Um, just remind everybody again, please consider checking out the links in our description. We have, of course, you can become a channel member, drop super chat, super thanks. Especially consider leaving comments on our videos. That really helps the algorithm out a lot. I know it's kind of annoying when people say that, but it's unfortunately the game that we kind of have to play with YouTube. Um, of course, liking, sharing the video, subscribe to our channel, obviously, if you're not already. We appreciate all of that. Um, and just, continue to let us know, give us your feedback if there's some topics you'd like to hear us talk about. I want to do more. I don't know. I don't really like doing the topics where I'm talking by myself. I much more enjoy having conversations with people. So I'm trying to get John and Aaron back on the show more. They've both been pretty busy with life, or are just, I've also been pretty busy with life lately, and it's just kind of been hard for our schedules to line up. But I definitely want to work on that. I'm also working on getting more guests on the show, and I'm kind of working on formulating this project I have in mind to do here on the Sacred Life. And I've been talking with a few individuals, kind of behind the scenes about this, where, there's a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of debates that go on, and there's some usefulness in the debates between, whether it be Catholics and Orthodox or Protestants or whoever it might be, discussing and debating these things. And I thought it would be interesting instead to have, I don't know, have conversations about these things where, especially like me as more of like an interviewer, just approaching it from a standpoint of like, I'm really fascinated by what people believe, even if I don't agree with them. And I just think it'd be interesting to do some more of that here on the Sacred Life. We kind of do that with each other when the three of us talk already, that we kind of have this fascination in what the other two think about things, and don't necessarily always see it necessary to argue and refute each other. And I'd like to kind of extend that, invite guests that maybe come from a different background or a different tradition, maybe have a different view of things than I do, um, and talk about kind of some of those kind of things. And really kind of a motivation behind that project is to underscore this, I don't know, this kind of belief that I have, this philosophical belief that I have, that the things that drive the different conclusions that people come to are really like really deep underlying philosophical ideas. And it's kind of really difficult to I'm sorry, it's difficult to understand and to uncover what is going on beneath the surface, and why it is that, you and I can come to such vastly different conclusions based on reading the same authors, the same texts, the same scriptures, whatever it might be. And so I'd like to do some of that on the Sacred Life. I hope you guys are excited about that as well. If you have some people that you'd like for me, or maybe me and John, or maybe if you'd like for us in general to talk to, in that kind of way, where an anti-debate, I guess you could call it. um, Definitely leave some suggestions for that, and we'd appreciate that. And again, if you have any suggestions also for content, for questions, for topics that you'd like to see the three of us, myself, John, and Aaron, talk about here on the Sacred Life, drop those as well. Anyway, that's all I have to say. John, I don't know if you have anything else to say in conclusion or not. Anything to add to those projects and future content on the channel?
No, just have a good night, get some sleep. It'll be good for your prayer life if you do.
Or don't get some sleep. That could also be
Right.
good for you.
Both are valid options.
Yes. Yes, I think that's good. And make sure to stand up when you pray.
Some of the
um,
time.
some of the time. Yes. Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap up. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for those of you who caught us live, and for those of you who are watching this video afterwards. We appreciate all of you. And until next time, wish you all peace in Christ.